Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakaha Kodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in 2nd Esdras chapter 9, verse 1. He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself, which is exactly what the true men of the Lord, the prophets of the Most High, chiefly through GMS or Great Millstone, are doing by watching the news and reading the scriptures and filtering the news through the scriptures and then going out onto the highways and byways to preach this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this, not only telling the elect of the nation of Israel of the times to come and what they need to do to stay in the good graces of their power, Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai, but also to tell 2/3 of the nation of Israel, or you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans who are hard-headed and refuse to return under your power, and you heathen nations of the terrible times to come and the judgment from Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai on you for all the wickedness you've been committing. And when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made, visit and judge you people for all the wickedness you've been committing on it. Verse 3, Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. For like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. And if you've got that spiritual eyesight, you can clearly see that the end is manifesting right before us. The end of this current age of the rulership of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites or the so-called white people, before the kingdom of heaven, which will be for eternity, is ushered in, where the children of Israel will be ruling. And some of the signs to look for to know that you're living in the last seconds of these last days, the end of the rulership of the heathen nations, is as it says back up in verse 3, Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes in diverse places, which are happening damn near daily all across the planet, and in some places, multiple earthquakes are happening in a single day, such as in California a couple of weeks ago, and uproars of the people in the world. And all throughout 2019, you had a lot of people across the planet starting to rise up and go against their governments and protest for what they saw as austerity measures that were really not benefiting them and only benefiting those at the top. And then during 2020, you had the C-19 lockdowns, which caused people, especially in Europe, to start protests. And now, in 2021, the protests continue, which is what I'll be dealing with in this video with a clip from RT America's YouTube channel titled President Escapes Assassination Amid Deadly Violence, Uproars of the People in Colombia. And as we'll see in this clip, people in Colombia began to protest against their government for passing a tax bill, and then eventually the government took away that tax bill, but the people continued to protest, and these protests morphed from just the tax bill to cover a lot of other issues that the people had grievances with their government, such as rampant poverty in Colombia, inequality in education and health, and police brutality. And also, as it says back in the title of this clip, President Escapes Assassination. Apparently, there was an attempt on the president's life by far-right militant groups. And the reason I say supposedly is because later on in this clip, they'll have an expert say that the president was flying in a helicopter over territory that's known to be attacked by these left-wing militants on the Colombia's military. So whether it was a direct assassination attempt on the president or not, or just business as usual between the military and militant groups, is besides the point. It's all a part of the uproars of the people in the world, and it further plays into 2nd Esdras chapter 15, verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men. And when you look up the definition for that word sedition, it means conduct or speech inciting rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. Hey, from the average everyday Colombian protesting against the government, wanting to see the rampant poverty end, want to see equality in health and education, and see police brutality get stemmed down, all the way up to left-wing militant groups going against the government and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And your modern day kings and princes are your political figures, like these mayors, governors, senators, presidents, prime ministers, etc., etc., as well as the authorities that uphold the government, like the police or the military. And hey, these protests and uproars of the people around the world are only going to continue and intensify as we get closer and closer to Yahushua HaMashiach, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ's second coming. There will be blood in the streets, blood of the protesters, blood of these politicians, and blood of the authorities trying to uphold the government. And it's especially going to be bad over here in the United States of America with all these guns laying around. And if you've been paying attention in the news, you can see that the situation in the United States of America is quickly deteriorating. There's mega droughts going on, talks of water shortages and food shortages, and talks of hyperinflation, which when that really hits, people are going to bug out because they won't be able to afford whatever is left at these stores. And then you've got people that lost their jobs during the C-19 and people that can't find jobs, and also people facing being kicked out of their houses with this eviction moratorium coming to an end. So it's all a brew, a powder keg that's just waiting to go off. So like we always tell you, sincere Akim out there, you should be doing whatever you can to stay in the good graces of your power, Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai, so you can hope to have that protective hedge over you for when all these calamities of Jacob's trouble, the seditions among men, uproars of the people, famines, martial law, you name it, kick off. But let's get back to this clip.
Portable TV. Come watch with me. The violence is escalating in Colombia as people from average citizens to the president are targeted. The country is in a state of turmoil as...
And real quick, those Colombians are actually Israelites of the northern kingdom of the tribe of Asher.
Months of violent protests continue while armed groups target government officials. RT's Alex Mihailovich has the story.
This has been a common scene in Colombia since the end of April. Violent protests have enveloped the nation since the Colombian government introduced a tax on April the 15th, meant to boost the nation's economy, which shrank by 6.8% in 2020 due to strict COVID-19 restrictions. Even though the country is a staunch ally of the U.S. and the top recipient of American assistance in Latin America, unemployment in Colombia reached 16.8% this past March, while over 42% of the population of 50 million now lives in poverty. With protests raging, within weeks, Colombia's right-wing president, Iván Duque, withdrew the tax. But the anti-government demonstrations have not stopped.
We want for justice on a better country.
Demonstrators have since demanded that the government take action against poverty, inequities in healthcare and education, police brutality, and the increase in violence across the country.
Uproars of the people,
the violence hit
sedition among men.
Friday as a helicopter carrying Colombia's leader came under fire in a region bordering Venezuela. The government is looking for those who are responsible.
There are more than 40 specialized teams working with these 150 people in the different fields of ballistic research, graphology, in spoken portraits, in the spirit of finding the physical evidence and the probative elements based on the information that has been collected at the crime scene. It has been publicly announced there's a reward of 3 billion pesos for information on the attack.
The reward equals nearly $800,000 US. No one was injured in the incident. President Duque has said that the attack against him will not deter his government.
Nuestro estado es fuerte.
Our state is strong, and Colombia is strong enough to continue to confront these threats. We will continue working every day and demonstrating the state is present everywhere in the territory.
Adding to the current instability in Colombia, in recent days, at least 9 people, including 4 police officers, have died in 3 separate attacks. Armed groups are being blamed for the violence, with some believing that there may be ties to Colombia's largest rebel group, the Leftist National Liberation Army, or ELN. Earlier this month, a car bomb at a military base in northeastern Colombia injured 36 people.
They shall
The
not
ELN
regard their
denied
kings
any
nor
involvement
princes.
in that incident. According to the International Committee of the Red Cross, as protests continue to rage, currently there are 5 ongoing conflicts involving armed groups in Colombia. A Colombian observer group has said, so far this year, there have been 45 massacres in which 3 or more people have been killed in a single attack. Colombia's ombudsman says more than 27,000 people have been displaced across the nation since the first quarter of 2021 due to threats and violence. Making matters worse, Colombia is dealing with a deadly resurgence of COVID-19. Recently, the death toll surpassed 100,000 in that country. For RT, I'm Alex Mihailovich.
And now joining us for analysis of this ongoing violence in Colombia is Oliver Dodd. He's a PhD researcher at the University of Nottingham, specializing in Colombia. Oliver, thank you for joining us today. My first question to you, who might you suspect are the culprits behind this attempted downing of President Duque's helicopter, given the area he was flying over at the time?
Well, that's exactly one of the things we really need to understand here, the context in which Ivan Duque was flying. We're talking about a group of military helicopters that were flying over a long historic rebel stronghold. And as a response, it was most likely rebels that were returning fire in response to these military aircraft, which were following over very much a military stronghold. These are the same kind of helicopters that have been used historically to target left-wing guerrillas in the night. So it's no surprise to me that they responded with gunfire. It was only a few months ago that I was actually in the region of Catatumbo doing a face-to-face interview with one of the guerrilla commanders here. So I know very well the region, and I know very well that it's very frequent that the guerrillas return fire to military aircraft who are flying over. But the idea that this is a premeditated assassination attempt backed by Venezuela, which many in the Colombian state are making out to be the case, is ridiculous. It's a way to try to drum up support for the hostility against Venezuela and try to increase economic and military support, increases that already exist for the Colombian state in their war, not just against left-wing movements, but against civilian demonstrators.
Now, what about these?
Again, for there shall be sedition among men, conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch.
Deadly clashes and protests cropping up all over the country. What is driving all these young people to the streets, especially as we just saw in the video in Bogota?
Well, as your reporter mentioned, we've seen a huge escalation in the deaths and cases of coronavirus. Plus, on top of this, we've really seen decades of inequality, really since the republic was founded in Colombia, and it's actually been increasing rather than decreasing. And in the context of the coronavirus, this has actually exacerbated the situation. And more than 3 million people have been flung into extreme poverty since March 2020. So there's been a huge mobilization on the streets of Colombia in protesting against the kind of inequality that exists and spreads, but then the kind of repression that is used to take it down. Massive police violence, massive state terrorism that has been used against not just left-wing rebels, but civilians on the ground has really caused the resistance in Colombia to be much more passionate in their response to the state. So it's no surprise to me that the protests have exacerbated. And it was only last month that we saw an invasion, really, of Venezuela and an assassination of one of the leaders of the FARC, La Segunda Marquetalia, which was quite close to the Catatumbo, where we recently saw the attack against the president, but over in the Venezuelan side. And it was local witnesses that were able to actually confirm that this was commandos sent from the Colombian state, which flew back from Venezuela to Colombia. So it's no surprise that we see today a kind of gangster regime in Colombia.
Now, I'm glad you bring up the FARC. Could you explain to us the role of the FARC and of the ELN in the country right now, especially since there was a peace deal that was signed between the government and the FARC? Does that peace deal mean anything at this point?
Well, one of the things the Colombian state are trying to do, as they always have done, is try to make out the peaceful protesters to be members of the FARC, to be led by the FARC or the ELN. This is a tactic that really goes back decades. We're talking the 1960s, 50s. The left wing in Colombia, civilian demonstrators have always been accused of being terrorists. The state of the FARC and the ELN is that they're not behind. If anything, one of the means that the peaceful protesters didn't have on the streets is the means to defend themselves against the kind of state violence. So I'd argue that the FARC and the ELN have certainly not been behind the peaceful protesters, and the accusations that are being put forward are kind of they're trying to stigmatize the situation. But the area of Catatumbo is very much controlled by these left-wing rebel movements that have grown since really what has been the betrayal of the 2016 peace agreement. They've actually grown, increased their strength in areas like Catatumbo. So it's no surprise to me that we saw these gunshots over the last few days. We have to understand this in the context of
They shall not regard their kings nor princes.
Civil war where aircraft, military aircraft, like that which was flown in by the Colombian president, are used regularly to attack Colombian rebels.
Wow, a lot of information to take in there. Oliver Dodd, thank you so much for joining us.
That's it with this. Hey, this is just another prophecy update to Yakim out there, just to show you that, hey, with each passing day, we're getting closer and closer to our salvation and the downfall of our enemies, these heathen nations, chiefly these Edomites. So again, you sincere Akim out there should be doing whatever you can to stay in the good graces of your power, Yahweh Bahasham Yahabashai, so you can be safe from these calamities of Jacob's trouble and get beamed up on those chariots and be of that elect number, first fruits in the kingdom of heaven. So with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified, and as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.